Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Dennis. So today we're going to review the MSI B550 Gaming Carbon Wi-Fi motherboard. We'll get out of the box, we'll have a look at it, we'll go over all the features, and that'll be about it. There we go. Okay, so here we'll have a look at our motherboard. We're going to get everything out of the box, and we'll see what all comes with it. Pretty much standard these days, but we'll go through it anyway for those that are buying their first motherboard in a long time. So let's get it open. So first thing we see is our motherboard, and we're going to get it out, but we're not going to look at it first. We're going to look at everything else that's in the box. So we're just going to set it aside. So nothing else here, but underneath, of course, we will have all our manuals. We'll have our manual here. It shows you everything to do with setup, all that kind of good stuff. All right. We've got our little decal, our sticker, whatever you want to call it. Our screws for our M.2, which there's 3 inside this. So that's always good to have. Some advertising for other products. Your DVD with all your software, utilities, all that kind of good stuff that you'll need. Now, something to keep in mind with that is if you don't have a DVD drive, because a lot of people don't, if you have an external DVD drive, you can use that. Or you can go direct to the website, download it from there. Either way, you should go for the website afterward anyway and get all the most current drivers and stuff. If you need to, you can also copy it all over to a USB drive from the website if you choose to do so. Or if you need to do that just to get the network working, which sometimes occurs. So more advertising, more product reviews, labels, if you want to label your cables, how to install your CPU, okay, quick installation guide. And of course, they give this warning. Basically, it tells you where your spots are for putting your standoffs, all that kind of good stuff. We have our thermal resistor. Actually, this one is a RGB extender for addressable RGB. Then we have our antenna for the Wi-Fi. This is so this one here plugs into your motherboard. I'll show you that in a little bit. And you'll be able to take your temperatures directly from that to know how your motherboard's performing, what temperature it's getting to. And of course, we have a couple of SATA cables. And that is all that's in the box. So something I did want to just go over is, nobody shows this, but I thought I'd show it just so you can see all the different features, everything it has. Sometimes you're looking this up, you want to find it fast, you just want to find out what its features are. So of course it has a core boost, a digital power sign for multi-core CPU, which most of them are today. 2 times CPU power. So connectors support a maximum of 405 amps or 540 watts for power delivery from the 4 and the 8 pin, which I will show you on the motherboard eventually. 2.5 gigabyte LAN, 2 times faster speed for up to 64 gigabyte a second. And Lightning Gen 4, so that's your latest generation PCIe 4.0. Okay, you got 2 times bandwidth, and you have Gen 4 M.2 slot with up to 64 gigabyte per second. And of course, you have Wi-Fi 6 with Bluetooth, 2.4 gigabyte a second, and Bluetooth 5.1. Audio boost, 100 decibels SNR, 192 kilohertz, 24-bit. Pretty standard stuff, nothing really surprising. And of course, it's controlled all your RGB lighting through Mystic Light. I get lots of questions on that. And one of the things I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you some of the things to look for on this motherboard. A lot of people buy motherboards nowadays. They don't think about the lighting until after they got the motherboard. You need to think about that before you buy your motherboard. And I'll show you why. I'll talk about it a little bit in this video so you'll be prepared for when you go and buy. All right. So some of the other features, easy LED control. So there's a button on the motherboard that will turn your RGB on and off. Some people don't like RGB. They want it gone. Has a pre-installed I/O shield so that you don't have to put one in your case. Some people used to forget. You don't have to worry about that anymore. The cooling, okay, so it has an aluminum cover, and which enlarges the surface of heat dissipation with additional choke for better cooling effect. And of course, your M.2s are shield frozen. That's pretty much a standard for MSI. And they're airflow optimized, which means you can use PWM or DC fan and a pump ready fan for any MSI cases, liquid cooling kits. depending on which one you're using. It doesn't have to be just MSI. It can be Corsair. It could be just any of them that make water coolers. Be Quiet is a good one. So let's get on to the actual motherboard and go over the features I'm talking about here so I can show them to you. Okay, so looking at the back of your motherboard, so this is the pre-installed I/O shield right here, the one that goes around, so that when you put it in your case, that's already done for you. So we're going to start off left to right, and we're going to go with the top one, which is your display port, the bottom one, which is HDMI. You have a couple USB 2.0. Now, you have a BIOS flashback button, so you push this for a couple seconds with a USB in here. There's a whole procedure to it. I'm not going to get into it right now. And without a CPU or anything on it, you have to have your power hooked up. Anyway, I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to give the wrong information right now. I'll do that in a future video. There's a way to update your BIOS without having the CPU or anything in it. So that's just a great feature. And otherwise, it just acts as just a normal USB 2.0. Of course, over here, we have our USB 3.2 Generation 1 and two USB 2.0s. Here's our 2.5 gigabyte LAN and another USB 3.2 Gen 2, 100 gigabyte a second. And of course, our USB Type-C. All right, we have our Wi-Fi for our antenna to go onto, and all our connectors for sound, your spiffed out, speakers, mics, all that kind of good stuff. So let's move on to the other important features on this board. Okay, so I'm going to go through this end of the board. We're going to go across. This is the most important part of your board for when you're doing your build and you need to know where everything goes. So we're going to start off right here. Now it says JAUD1. So J audio basically means that's your HD audio, where your audio connector is going to go, is right here. We're going to move over to right here. So this is the RGB1. So this is the 12 volt. Okay, it's a 12 volt RGB header. Okay, not to be mistaken for a 5 volt addressable RGB header, which I will show you a little bit later here. So we go system fan. We have a clear CMOS button. Here's the switch I was talking about earlier, be able to turn everything on and off if you don't want the RGB. We have our system fan, USB, another USB 3.0, and the thing that a lot of people don't know what it is sometimes is this one, which is just your for your speaker, if you happen to have one to plug into it, and your JFP1 or your front panel connectors. So when you're looking at the front panel connectors, on the top two left pins is going to be your PLED positive and negative. Down below that is your HDD LED. Moving on the top again over to the next two pins is going to be your power, and down below that will be your reset. That's pretty much a standard for every system you build. They'll all be the same. So that's just nice to know. We have another system fan here. First we have our M.2. That's going to go underneath here, and of course further up. Okay, I'll show that in a minute. And we have our PCIe 3.0 times 1 slots. Now we have 1, 2, 3 of those on this motherboard, and we'll show you the rest of that in a bit. Something else that people don't always know about is the audio. Audio nowadays is on your motherboard. You don't need to go out and buy a card. You can, it will definitely help, but it's not a requirement anymore with the modern day motherboards. That is right here. You can see how right here it's got that line coming down, goes all the way across, so that it basically makes this protected from any static from the motherboard or the rest of it, so that it doesn't get any kind of interference. So that will give you the best sound. Now, make sure to get the best sound, you plug in from the back of the motherboard. Plugging in when you're on your case to the connectors on the front, you'll get sound, but they will not be the top quality. Plugging into the back is going to give you your best quality sound. Okay, so we're going to see a little bit more of the motherboard here. So you can see here our M.2 drive and another one here. Now, one thing I want to point out, you can see that little blue strip, one here and one there. If you see that, then that little strip has to come off when you install an M.2 drive. Okay, make sure you do that. A lot of times they don't show that in videos. Sometimes I forget to show it. and you just see the M.2 installed and you don't know what that is, it needs to come off, okay? Otherwise, it's gonna kind of affect your thermals for your M.2. No, I don't know how much effect it will really have in the end, but it will have some. So make sure that you remove those when you install an M.2 drive. So we have our PCIe 4.0 times 16 slot here and times 3 here, all right? So you have 2 graphics card slots. They are not SLI, they are Crossfire for AMD, but that doesn't mean you can't run an NVIDIA graphics card in them. You certainly can. You just can't run 2 at a time, which NVIDIA doesn't support much anyway these days, so something to keep in mind. And you see that little tab? That tab comes off. So you can just take this little tab, see if I can get it off here so I can show you, and this whole thing peels off. Don't forget to take it off. Okay, again, something that you don't always see, they may not explain. And there's another one up here. I'll show you that too in a little bit later. These are things you need to look on. Even when you get graphics cards, you'll have bits of plastic on them. They're all there to keep it clean and nice, but you need to take those things off. They will affect not performance, but they could affect the heat and how it's dissipating, all that kind of good stuff. But that pretty much covers this. Of course, you have CMOS batteries right here, which some people don't know what that is. And we're going to move to the other side of the board and show you a little bit more. Okay, so looking at this side of the board, we've got our USB Type-C. So if you have a computer case, you have a Type-C connector on it, and you do not have this, I have a video as well that shows you how to add that, but you're going to need to have something, either the USB port already on the motherboard, or you're going to have a device so you can activate your Type-C. Okay, so I'm going to lift it up so you can see the motherboard just to give you a quick look. So you can see there are 6 SATA connectors. See the L shape on that? That's what you need to be looking for. So when you plug it in, your SATA cable, so you go in the right direction. These can be broken quite easily. So don't force them. Gently guide them on and you'll be good. So 2, 4, 6 on the motherboard to connect up other devices. So something else I want to point out is what you can see right here. 3rd gen AMD Ryzen desktop processor compatible. Okay, it says it's not compatible with Ryzen 5 3400G and Ryzen 3 3200G processors. I get that question a lot. So now you can see right there, as long as you've watched this far in the video, what it's compatible. Something to keep in mind, I've come across it already once, and I have no doubt it's going to happen again on this one. For your CPU, if you're using the 5000 series CPU, provided you can be lucky enough to get a hold of one, they will probably require a BIOS update. Keep that in mind. With a BIOS flashback, you can do that without the CPU, anything like that. Look up the process, follow it. Don't just watch part of the video and then go ahead and do it, because if you do it wrong, you will brick your motherboard. Don't do it the wrong way. Very, very important. Unless you got money to burn, I suggest follow the whole thing, watch it, make sure you're watching the video from somebody you can trust and you rely on, not to guide you in the wrong way. Okay, can't stress the importance enough. So a couple more things on here. Everybody talks about, in fact, I do it a lot. You talk about that little lip or little tab. It's right here, okay, on your 24 pin. So when you're putting your 24 pin power connector on from your power supply, you want to have this click underneath of this. That way it's going to hold it in place, not going to come out, you're not going to have power problems, and you'll know it's in the right place and in the right orientation. All right, we have a couple more system fans here, one here, okay, so they get 2 there, and we're good to go. So let's move on. I want to show you about the difference between the addressable RGB and RGB headers. Okay, so I showed you earlier what an RGB header looks like. 4-pin 12 volt is an RGB header. 3-pin 5 volt is an addressable RGB header. Not every motherboard has both on it. Some will have 2 of each, which is fantastic. I think it should be a standard that they all have at least 1 of each. This is the addressable RGB header. You can see there's 2 pins here, a space, and another pin. Okay, because when you're plugging in an addressable RGB, whether it be from your fans that you connected together, whatever it might happen to be, if you don't have that, now you have to go get a device like a converter or something like that. Deepcool has one, and there's Easy DIY Fab has a whole bunch of different things you can use when you're missing something that your motherboard just didn't come with. keep that in mind. I do have videos on both of those as well. But look for the 4-pin, look for the 3-pin. If it's a couple of those and it's got the Type-C, chances are you got a pretty good motherboard on your hands and you're going to have all the features that you need. We have our 8-pin for this motherboard. They're not all the same. So this has an 8-pin for power and a 4-pin. All right. You only need to use the 8. If you use the 4, what that does is it gives you a little bit more headroom for overclocking. Okay, so if you're an overclocker and you want to, push a little bit more from your CPU, get a power supply that will give you the extra cable to be able to do that. All right. The Corsair RM850, which is one of the ones I'm going to be wind up using, has those cables. So some more things to point out is our massive heat shield, all right, that this motherboard has. So temps and VRMs should be pretty good. You have your AM4 socket for your Ryzen processors, all right. Just you may sometimes need to remove these brackets, which you've probably seen in some of my videos, unless you're new here. We have dual channel memory slots. You're going to occupy slot number 2, slot number 4. All right. So slot 2 and 4 are the ones you're most going to occupy. Something that doesn't always get pointed out, and you've got this little slot here and it says J Corsair. Some motherboards, the Corsair power supplies, have what's called a Corsair link. And that is what you can use it for. So plug into. To find out all that about how you use Corsair Link, look up a video on it. I haven't done one, and that'll tell you more about how that's used. But it's just something to know is if you're going to plan on having that feature, again, something else that you need to look for. So you just want to come back to this side one more time. Okay, I was pointing out this, so you want to make sure you take that off as well. Now, I'm not saying it'll do any damage if you leave them on, but they are meant to be taken off. Now, this motherboard is probably the best motherboard I've actually reviewed so far of the B550 series. It is an ATX form factor, and it is 6 PCB layers and 2 ounces of copper. So, and it is of course a gaming motherboard. Something to keep in mind for those that makes a difference to. And of course, it does support both Ryzen 3000 and 5000 series CPUs. So I don't pretend to know a lot about this, but one thing I can say for the VRM, and it has a 1460 amps power stages for a total of 840 amps, 720 amps on the CPU, rather the CPU socket, I mean. And of course, the other thing to keep in mind is this is one of the better B550 motherboards out there that is going to be just amazing at overclocking. So if you're an overclocker, this is the motherboard you're going to want to get. So I do want to go back to the memory again. So you've got your 4, so channel 1 and 2, dual channel, will support up to 128 gigabyte of DDR4 memory. And of course, it's been reported that the single DIMM score on one of this, I'm not sure who it was that got that illustrious number, he got 5100 megahertz out of a single DIMM scoring for the memory. So I don't know who did that, but kudos to him or her, whoever it is. Well, something else I just wanted to clarify is the X570 has a fan. The B550 does not have a fan. The chipset only puts out 6 watts, so it really doesn't need to be cooled by a fan. So just, you get all the power of an X570 motherboard type thing in the different form factor. And the M.2s can go up to 32 gigabytes per second for your M.2 speeds. All right, keep that in mind. So if you're going to buy your M.2, maybe instead of getting an SSD, get an NVMe to take advantage of all that speed. And the first one, of course, being PCIe 4.0, can go up to a max of, I think it's 64 gigabyte per second. So crazy, right? So I wanted to go back to the back of the motherboard because I forgot to point out that it also has the PS2 port for like a legacy motherboard or mouse or something like that. And I also wanted to point out the fact that our sound coming out of here is the Realtek ALC 1220A codec. So you're going to have the very best sound coming from this motherboard. And for those of you that are wondering how many fans it'll do, it has 8 PWM fans, and it even has 1 water pump connector. Another really great feature that I don't always point out that I wanted to on this one As you can see here, it says Easy Debug LED. So these little LEDs here will light up during the boot process. And then you can look at that and determine if something's going wrong or if everything's going, you can see what is going on and determine from that if you have any issues or maybe something that's help you to diagnose it. So going back to the 6-layer PCB, so what that does is it improves the signal transmission for high performance capabilities across the motherboard. Of course, you have your core boost technology, digital PWM, you've got your steel reinforced PCIe, and yeah, there's just features that add to this motherboard that really make it stand out. And the VRMs with the massive cooling that's got on here and here, they really went all out with making that work. They've gone all out. They've got it right. And this is one of the motherboards I would recommend straight across the board. And of course, let's not forget that it has 12+2 power stage design, 60 amp SPS, and titanium choke 3. It has a 12+2 digital power with doubler design. Not to mention the fact that the thermal solution for high performance multi-core processors with the aluminum they put into the heat designs to make sure that the cools the VRMs. Okay, so before we leave, we're going to talk about the Dragon Center. That was one of the things I wanted to bring up, along with the RGB, which I've already discussed. 3-pin, 4-pin, look for it on your motherboard, look for the Type-C. Dragon Center, when you install it, I find I've had issues where it says it cannot install STK. So I spent hours trying to get this program to work, and finally what it was, uninstall the SDK from your programs. So go into your settings, uninstall apps, uninstall SDK, uninstall Dragon Centers completely. Go into MSI's Dragon Center, or MSI's website, find the Dragon Center from there, download it, brand new, and let it do its thing. It will install the SDK for you as part of the whole thing. Once it did that, everything worked like a charm, and I had no more issues. I actually use CC Cleaner. I know a lot of people said all things about it from a little bit going back, but it still works. It'll uninstall all the registry settings, everything like that for you, so you don't have to mess with that. Uninstall it from there if you wish. It'll clean install after that, and it will work. At least it did for me. Hopefully it will for you. Anyhow, getting back onto the motherboard, that's it for the video. If you like it, hit that like. If you don't, you know what to do. If you're new here, think about hitting that subscribe. Hit that bell for future notifications of videos as they come up. And ultimately, thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.